Question 1. Can you get from the start of Mountain Caves all the way to the Tomb of Qualopec entirely out of bounds in Tomb Raider Anniversary? Yes. Question 2. Should you do that? No. It gave me carpal tunnel. Question 3. So why did you do that? I'm currently unemployed and had nothing better to do. That pretty much answers everything you need to know about this challenge, but if you want to know more, keep watching. There's a lot that goes into doing this and it took a lot of problem solving. You might find it interesting. I'm going to assume you know nothing about Tomb Raider glitching or speedrunning if you're watching this video, so it's going to be a bit exhaustive. If you're already familiar with this stuff, you can find an unedited video without commentary on my second channel. Let's get started. The first trick you're going to need to know is airwalking, originally found by Riku. This is one of, if not the most versatile glitches in this game. There's two methods of attaining an airwalk. The first is jumping straight at a ledge that's roughly knee to waist height. There's a certain animation you want, which is where Laura needs to correct the placement of one of her legs. If you pull out your weapon just before hitting the edge and keep moving, you're airwalking. The second method is jumping backwards at a ledge and getting the same animation. As you can tell, this can be extremely useful for crossing large gaps or getting to unintended places. However, it isn't perfect. There's a few drawbacks to airwalking. For one, you can't stop moving. If you stop moving, you fall. You also can't jump without falling, although you can dodge in the air as much as you like. Finally, you can't gain or lose height at will. You're reliant on level geometry and collisions to do that. At the start of Mountain Caves, we almost immediately get an airwalk, similar to most speedruns of the game. However, unlike most speedruns, we do not immediately go out of bounds to get behind the large door. Instead, we go to the area in front of the door and continue upwards, platforming our way up to the button. Here, we get a second airwalk using the other method, then go to a certain part of the rock wall nearby to lose some height. Then, going back to the door, we walk against this space to lose more height until we stop moving. This will be very important soon. Now we'll go out of bounds. From this point onward, we will be out of bounds until we reach the Skion inside the Tomb of Qualopec at the end of the Peru section. If we pop in bounds, the attempt fails, and if we lose our airwalk, we'll fall endlessly into the void below. Right at this door is where the loading trigger for the next segment of the game is. The term used for this is a portal. You can find them using the Indra 55's debug menu hook, which can be found in the description below. The reason we lost height outside the door before is because it puts us at the perfect elevation such that we can hit the portal, but not so low that we are forced inbounds by the surrounding collision, seen here in green. After that, we'll travel down the hallway. Once again, we need to gain enough height to load the next segment, but need to be high enough to remain out of bounds. There's some collision for the ceiling that we can use to gain height. This is unfortunately going to be what we spend a lot of this challenge doing. I'll have more to say about this later, but for now, just know that this isn't quite as easy as it looks. Once we're high enough, we can gain more height by walking into this wall, which helps put us at the necessary elevation to hit the area portal. The next area portal is far below where we're at now. Under normal circumstances, we wouldn't be able to lose height without popping in bounds, so it might seem like we're in a bit of trouble here. Luckily, we have another glitch up our sleeve. Time to learn about fall damage canceling. A speedrunner known as Tayraz discovered that if you have your guns held out and jump, then cycle between your weapons and hit the grapple hook button, you can completely negate fall damage. Only we have another problem. At the start of the game, you don't have another weapon. You only have your pistols. As luck would have it, there's a second method which I discovered. If you're missing at least one round from your weapon, you can hold the reload button and perform the same jump with proper timing. This will also enable you to grapple just before hitting the ground. This is a more versatile implementation of fall damage canceling, and thankfully the timing is pretty lenient. It isn't quite as fast as the other method, but can be used without first needing to obtain another weapon. So that's what we do here. Where are we landing though? As it turns out, for some reason there are two support beams with large collision boxes surrounding them, including the top. This is actually extremely rare for the developers to do. You can find other similar supports used throughout the game which do not have this. It's actually a bit annoying, as if there were other places that featured things like this, it could make for some really cool and interesting skips, but that's a whole other discussion. Anyway, we make the jump down to the collision and perform a fall damage cancel, remaining out of bounds. From there, we can do another airwalk and we're back on track. Time to lose some more height for the next area. We can use the ground collision of the previous area to do that, using this slope to lose even more height. We're now low enough to hit the next portal, but we need to lose even more height for reasons that will become clearer soon. To do that, we'll need to use the very edge of this collision near this ledge. After bumping against it a few times, we're low enough to go underneath the ledge, which we can use to lose even more height. From there, we'll hit the portal. Welcome to the Wolf Pit, the exit of which is all the way up here above us. Even if we hadn't lost more height than needed before, we never would have been high enough to reach this, and there's no collisions we can use since everything here is a perfectly vertical wall. We need collisions to be sloped in order to gain or lose height. So now what? Well, there's actually a second portal in this area. It's beneath the ending platform. This area is used to get one of the game's secrets and loops back from the area we're going to next. If it weren't for this challenge would have ended right here. The height we lost in the previous area is perfect for hitting this portal and remaining out of bounds. After that, we gain a little bit of height from a nearby collision and then backwards handspring on top of the door for even more height. Near the exit of this area is a large slope. Its collision is forgiving enough such that we can fairly easily gain height on the edge of it without accidentally clipping in bounds. From there, we can easily load the next area, nice and easy. Until the next room, that is. The portal we need is all the way up here. That's already a lot of height that we need to gain in order to leave, but it's even worse. Looking forward into the next area, the ending portal is all the way across the hallway, through the door, and at the top of this staircase. And there isn't any collision to gain height on that we can remain out of bounds for, so we actually need to gain enough height in this area to be able to hit the portal for the next area too. Goody. Okay, so to start with, we need to gain more height using this beam. The collision here is not forgiving. You can easily accidentally clip in bounds, and I did, on many attempts. From there, we need to backtrack a bit to the staircase, and use the walls to gain height similar to the start of the cave section from earlier. As we near the main section of the room, there's a sharply angled bit of collision that we can use to gain more height. Now is where I'm going to talk about what makes this so difficult. You see, if Lara hits any bit of this collision such that it crosses over half of her hitboxes, whether that's vertical or horizontal, the game will have her clip inside. These collisions are really only one way, meaning they try to keep you from going out of bounds, but they're more than happy to let you go in bounds. It is only through careful maneuvering that we're able to exploit the way that collisions work in this game to gain or lose height. That doesn't sound so bad, right? It's simply a matter of being careful, and that's true. But don't forget, I can't actually see them. What this means is that for much of this challenge, I had to memorize the location of invisible barriers. Not only their locations in 3D space with very few reference points, but also their angles and what surrounds them so that I don't accidentally clip in bounds. This has been true for the entire run up to this point, but nowhere is this more challenging than in this tiny room right here. It's also why I refer to this challenge as the invisible tightrope. Any character movement just slightly too far, or any camera movement that isn't just right, means a clip in bounds and restarting the run. This is what made this roughly 20-minute run take several days worth of attempts. As with the previous instances of this, I likely won't reference how tough and unforgiving this aspect of the run is again. However, anytime I'm using invisible collisions to gain or lose height, you can assume that it's only through extreme caution and practice that I'm able to do this at all, and that I'm under constant threat of failure. Also keep in mind that for gaining height, I'm having to continually move forward and back, and I can't stop moving or I'll drop the airwalk. If you're watching this with a keyboard in front of you right now, go ahead and place your middle finger on the W key and your index finger on the S key. Then imagine constantly shifting back and forth between those for several hours on end over the course of about 3 or 4 days. That also doesn't include all the time I spent working out strategies for this either. Remember when I said that this challenge gave me carpal tunnel? At a certain point, we're unable to gain any more height using the ceiling of this part of the room, but we still need to gain a lot more for the portal at the end of the following area. There's a slope here that we can use to gain height, but there's a flat section here that prevents us from using it. The only spot I could find that wasn't a flat wall that we could use is over here by this wooden beam. This is another good example of having to memorize the location of something that I couldn't actually see using only a few visual references. After very carefully maneuvering and bumping against the edge of this collision, we're high enough to gain height on the collision in the aforementioned area. Once at the top, we can use the ledge of this area to gain even more height, finally giving us what we need to continue. I know I talked about the former room for a while, but for reference, probably 80% of the attempts at this run that I did ended in that room alone, due to the complexity of the collisions I had to interact with. Luckily, that's all over with, but that's not to say we don't have more trouble coming up very soon. Loading this room, however, is quite easy. Actually, surprisingly easy. I never failed this one, but there's other similar areas that are a lot harder. I kind of wish they were all like this, but anyway. We travel across the room and up the stairs to the next portal, and as you can see, we're just high enough to hit this portal. Moving on, we're able to hit the portal leading to the city of Vilcabamba, which looks nothing like the actual city. Also, for some reason my frame rate starts dying. This game can be run on a dual-core processor, by the way. I'm not sure why this is happening to me, but anyway. After everything we did to gain that height before, we now need to lose height again. There's a roof sticking through the wall here, but only some of it has collision. Carefully moving to the edge, we can get another airwalk. Then, going underneath the roof, we can use more collision to go even lower and make our way to the exit with the next portal. There's not much to talk about for this area, it's just more out of bounds travel until we get to the next portal. Unlike in most areas, the doorframe next to this portal has solid collision when you're out of bounds, so you don't need to worry about popping in when running against it. The doorframe also prevents us from interacting with the portal, however, so we need to gain enough height and then go around the collision enough that we can interact with the portal but not pop in bounds. This is actually pretty easy, but there isn't a very good way of judging the right height for this. I mostly eyeball the top of the doorway to see when it intersects with about half of Lara's model and use that to judge. It was really rare for me to fail this, but remember, if I don't judge this correctly, I'll pop in bounds. After loading the next area, we gain some more height and continue forward and hit the next portal a little further down the hallway. This might actually be the smallest area in all of Tomb Raider Anniversary. I'm not really sure why they did that, but continuing on. We're too high for the next portal, so I need to lose height, but there's nothing around to do that with. Also, if I drop here, I'll fall into the void, so I need to make sure that or not? Okay, what's going on here? Time to explain how Tomb Raider Anniversary loads areas. As you've already seen, when you touch a portal, you load an area. However, other areas of the game are also loaded, but only partially. They still have collision, items, and enemies, but do not have portals or signals. I haven't talked about signals yet, but they're similar to portals. While portals are flags used for loading areas, signals are flags for other things such as spawning enemies, starting cutscenes, playing musical cues, etc. This is why it's important to hit the portals for each area though, because while adjacent area collisions are loaded, the ones past that are not, meaning more progress is impossible without hitting the portals. So back to the actual run. What's going on here? For some reason, the developers placed a large platform of collision out of bounds. This hallway has a bit of history with being redesigned, which I might discuss some other time, so maybe it has to do with that. But what's important is that you understand that this platform that I'm standing on is out of bounds of the rest of the area. So why did I drop my airwalk here? Remember, we were too high to hit the next portal. At the end of this unloaded area, the out of bounds platform has a wall connected to it. This right angle collision allows me to get another airwalk, but there's a big problem. There's only a thin path that connects to the spot I need to get to. On top of that, there's invisible walls that jut out from the sides that leave me an even tinier portion to walk on, and are easily large enough that it can make me fall if I'm not extremely careful. If I aim too far to one side, I'm at risk of falling into the void. If I aim too far to the other side, I'll pop in bounds. So what setup did I use to make sure that I got to the spot that I needed to without failure? Well, I didn't have one. Yeah, I couldn't find anything that could be used reliably. I simply eyeballed the previous area and tried my best to keep my camera absolutely parallel to it. Out of all the attempts that made it past the area before the darts, all but 4 attempts ended at this point. This is the next major choke point of the run, and even when I get past the 2 invisible walls, I have to make sure I don't continue walking too far. After that, it's a matter of rotating my camera 90 degrees and jumping back until I get the necessary animation to start an airwalk. Oh, and did I mention there's a wall directly next to this area that I can also pop in bounds with if I go too far back at this point? Yeah, why not just cover Lara in oil and spit fire at her during this too? Might as well. With more than a bit of luck, I make it through and get the airwalk, then work my way back, making sure not to pop in bounds and hit the portal. Then we continue forward with a dying frame rate and use some collision to lose height so we can hit the portal that leads to the Tomb of Qualipec. This is actually the only level end signal that we've interacted with so far, even though this is technically the 4th level of the game. Now we're in the last section of the challenge, but we're not out of the woods just yet. We start with a long hallway of ceiling collision bumps. There's not much to say here that I haven't said already. Again, everything I said about the small room before the darts applies to this as well. However, there's one anomaly when it comes to messing with collisions that I haven't discussed yet. For reasons we don't quite understand, in certain instances when hitting collisions you can get a really big vertical boost. This actually happened to me at this section during one of my attempts, but unfortunately it wasn't a successful one. Back to the real run. At the end of the hall we have the portal that leads to the main chamber of Tomb of Qualipec. This portal is situated at the very edge where the hallway and the chamber meet, making it extremely difficult to hit the portal without popping in bounds. It takes me multiple attempts to do it, but finally I see the chamber load and am able to continue on. I head toward the right hallway. There's a portal here, but we actually don't want to hit it. Not only would it pop us in bounds due to how the collision works in this area, but the ending point of this run is actually connected to the main chamber. Instead, we're using bits of the ceiling collision in the unloaded area to gain height. I use this cloud of dust as a rough estimate of where the collision is, and slowly inch my way further to the right until I begin hitting the collision. Now we go to the slopes which lead to the end. I have to be careful not to stray far from the boundaries of the level here, as the invisible walls of the unloaded area we were just at are nestled very close to our goal. And yes, I did have 2 out of the 4 attempts that made it this far end that way. Here, we're using the slope to gain height, similar to the area after the wolf pit from before. The textures are misleading as to where the true collision is, making this a lot harder than it might appear. I also have to do it backwards so my camera isn't being messed with by the wall nearby. Once I've gained enough height, I go back to the slope farther down, as I can gain more height using the ceiling above it. It's important that we gain more height than what is necessary just to be at the height of the portal. This is because there's an angled collision in front of the portal for the door frame that surrounds it. Because that collision is angled and the portal is not, more height means that we can avoid the collision and still hit the portal. However, this portal is similar to the previous one we hit, meaning it's no simple feat to hit it without popping in bounds. Finally, there's the signal which loads the cutscene for obtaining the Skion, which thankfully extends out of bounds. But first we need to hit that portal. Here it is. These are the final moments of the run. It all comes down to this. And just like that, we made it from the start of the mountain caves all the way to the Skion and Tomb of Qualipec entirely out of bounds. This isn't the actual end of the Peru section, but it's as far as you can get out of bounds since there's no way we know of to progress without hitting the trigger to begin the cutscene. But it's just a couple of hallways until you reach the end of this section. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, maybe check out the full unedited, uncommentated run on my second channel. Now that you've watched the explanation, see if you understand everything going on. I'd like to thank the Indra 55 for their menu hook, without which this run would have been made inconceivably more difficult. I'd also like to thank Riku and Teiraz for the airwalk and original fall damage cancel respectively, Katarev for being cute, and everyone in the Tomb Raider speedrunning community. This wasn't a speedrun, but it's only through combined efforts and shared knowledge of glitches, exploits, and game mechanics that I was able to complete this challenge. I would also like to thank Snoopy for providing the keyboard footage from earlier.
Hi, Femboy Gaming here. Ow, my hand, it has carpal tunnel.
All of these people's links can be found in the description below. If you liked this video, let me know. There's definitely more Tomb Raider Anniversary topics that I can talk about if there's enough interest, and it's obviously a game I'm familiar with. Alright, that's pretty much everything. Bye! Oh yeah, and Demon Souls next!